A virus broke out at my school, and everyone who got infected turned into terrifying monsters that bite anyone they see. I holed up in my dorm for a week. At first, I could still hear the screams of my classmates, but eventually, only the howls of monsters remained. My 3 roommates never came back after the outbreak, so I figured they probably didn't make it. When my girlfriend Xiaoya came to the dorm to find me, she was chased for 3 hours by a crazed Wankai and eventually got bitten on the calf. The virus quickly spread through her body, but unlike others who turned into monsters within 5 minutes of being bitten, Xiaoya managed to hold on for a whole day before gradually losing her mind. The last thing she said to me was, "Turning into a zombie is too ugly."
Please kill me quickly. I threw him out the window. He called out, "Dad!" Dad?
My whole body trembled. Maybe I could find a cure and turn her back into my little sweetheart. But right now, the biggest problem was how I was supposed to survive in this less than 10 square meter dorm room with a female zombie. I pulled the curtains tightly shut. To prevent the zombies from discovering there was still food here, I boarded up the door with wooden planks to keep them from breaking in. The most critical issue was food and water. I searched every bed in the dorm and found the snacks everyone had stashed away. After counting them, I figured it should be enough for us to eat for a week. But as for drinks, there were only 2 bottles of cola, which was far from enough. The tap in the bathroom had already run dry, and even if there was water, I wouldn't dare drink it anymore. Who knows if there are a few zombies soaking in the water plant. Luckily, it's winter now, and heavy snow falls frequently. All I need to do is put a wash basin out on the balcony to collect plenty of snow. The dorm has already lost power, so I had to break apart the shoe cabinet and burn the pieces in a tin box that used to hold cookies. I hung my lunchbox over it with a clothes hanger to boil water. That way, I could enjoy a steaming bowl of instant noodles. But what troubled me the most was, it was still Xiaoya. After she got sick, she stopped eating her favorite sausages and wouldn't drink her favorite yogurt anymore. I was really worried she might starve to death. Xiaoya kept baring her teeth at me and making grunting noises, and I was afraid she would attract zombies, so I stuffed a bowl of socks into her mouth. But to my surprise, she spat it out with a loud, "Wah! Sorry, I forgot to wash them first." I came up with another idea. I tore a t-shirt into strips and wrapped them around her mouth so she wouldn't be able to bite me. The days spent holed up in the dorm were long and agonizing. I would stand by the window, gazing into the distance. I noticed that there were fewer and fewer zombies on the playground. They seemed to fear the cold and disappeared completely as the heavy snow fell. Just then, I heard the sound of a key turning in the lock outside the door. Was someone here to rescue us? I looked through the peephole. It was the dorm manager unlocking the door to the room across the hall. I was a bit puzzled. The old man was over 60, so how did he manage to avoid all those zombies? But as soon as the door opened, he lunged at the students inside. I was completely stunned. Was he so hungry that he'd resorted to cannibalism? Suddenly, it seemed like the old man had noticed us. Anyone who's ever tasted human flesh knows it's sour, but this old man was eating with great relish. When he turned his head, I realized he was sick too. The old man seemed to have spotted us and started walking straight toward us. He pulled out a key and tried to unlock my door, but luckily, I had already barricaded the main entrance. But in the next second, he started ramming his head against the door like a mad dog, over and over, showing no sign of stopping even as his flesh was torn and bloody. The loud noise attracted other zombies, and soon they had completely surrounded the main entrance. I knew the door wouldn't hold much longer, but I lived on the 5th floor. Jumping down would almost certainly leave me half dead. In despair, I looked at Xiaoya. Maybe, in the apocalypse, joining the ranks of the zombies was the best option, but to become a zombie, I would end up harming others. They could be my classmates, my friends, or even my family. Forget it. I'd rather die quietly as a human. I tied the bedsheet to the ceiling, planning to hang myself. But just then, Xiaoya suddenly roared at me. "Are you saying goodbye to me? Don't worry, I'll be joining you soon." As soon as she finished speaking, Xiaoya suddenly broke free from the rope. Eva grabbed the bedsheet and with great effort managed to utter a single word. Suddenly, I understood. "You're suggesting I turn the bedsheet into a parachute and jump down, right?" I quickly used the Pythagorean theorem to calculate, and sure enough, the gravitational acceleration I'd experienced would be greatly reduced, allowing me to land safely. "Thank you, Xiaoya, but before I leave, I have to equip myself with weapons and armor. Who knows how many zombies are still out there?" I copied a scene from a movie and wrapped books around my arms with tape so I wouldn't get bitten on the wrist while fighting zombies. I then took some nails and hammered them into the baseball bat so I could take out zombies with a single blow to the head. Finally, I put on my backpack, took the last of my supplies, and got everything ready. I gathered up the bedsheet and leapt from the windowsill, but in the very next second, At that moment, Xiaoya calmly tossed down a bedsheet tied end to end from the windowsill and slowly slid down on it. What a mess. So that's what Xiaoya meant. Luckily, the snow on the ground was thick, so I wasn't hurt. I trudged through the school with Xiaoya. The heavy snow had blanketed the roads, and there was no sign of life anywhere. Even the zombies had disappeared. They were afraid of the cold too. When we arrived at the school supermarket, the main entrance had already been smashed open, so we got in easily. The place was a complete mess. Almost nothing was left on the shelves. It seemed that when the zombie virus broke out, the students had grabbed anything edible in a frenzy. Near the shelves, there were always a few human corpses that hadn't mutated, with obvious wounds on their bodies. They'd been killed by other people. There must have been fierce fights over food here, all under the shadow of the apocalypse. Food is the most important resource. I noticed there were still some scattered potato chips on the floor. These used to be Xiaoya's favorite snack when she was alive, but now she looked at them with obvious disdain. It seems that after mutating, she's lost all interest in snacks. We kept moving deeper into the supermarket, but suddenly... Damn, that scared the hell out of me. What's even more terrifying is that this thing is actually still alive. Luckily, the cables had it tightly bound, so it couldn't move at all. This isn't a place to linger. There might be more zombies in the ceiling, but just as I was about to leave, I noticed Xiaoya staring intently at the zombie, even drooling from her mouth. I was a bit stunned. Could it be that she actually wants to eat this thing? I knew that if Xiaoya ever tasted flesh, she would be completely lost to the zombie side, so I came up with an idea. First, I tied her up with a family heirloom knot, then found a dog collar in the supermarket and put it around her neck. With a gentle tug, she obediently followed me. Xiaoya hadn't eaten anything for a week, so I had to find her some proper food. I planned to try my luck at the cafeteria next door, but from a distance, I noticed a van parked at the entrance, with two men in uniform standing beside it, each holding a long fork. And one of them had a police baton. Instinctively, I hid behind a snowbank to observe them in secret, and Xiaoya cooperated by staying completely silent. I recognized their uniforms. They were the school security team. Whenever there was a fight or brawl on campus, they were always the first to rush in and ensure the students' safety. I was about to go up and ask for help, but suddenly, the van door swung open and a student who had been tied up burst out, desperately trying to escape. But in the next second, a brick struck the back of his head with deadly accuracy. The skinny security guard walked up, grabbed his hair, exposing his pale neck, and without hesitation, slit his throat. The sudden scene terrified me, and the two security guards immediately spotted me, calling me over with kindly expressions. As they dragged the body back to the van, they explained to me that the student had already been infected with the virus, and killing him was something they had no choice but to do. Half believing, half doubting, I walked over. They enthusiastically asked if I had been infected, but suddenly, the chubby security guard pointed behind me and shouted, "Watch out!" There was a zombie. I immediately turned to look, but there was nothing there. Then a sharp pain shot through my head and everything went black. When I came to, I was tightly bound and Xiaoya had also been tied up by them. She didn't know what was happening and was still asleep. I looked around. This seemed to be the security office. Nearby, several classmates were hanging from the ceiling, but what shocked me most was that some were missing a leg, others an arm. It was only then that I realized they were capturing the surviving students and keeping them like livestock. Whenever they wanted to eat meat, they would just cut a piece off from them. They wouldn't die from it, so each time they could have fresh meat. As for the one who disobeyed during the day, he was chopped up, hung on the wall to air dry, and made into cured meat. When the security guard saw I was awake, he excitedly said to me, "You're pretty tough, kid. Where did you find such a pretty girl and even tie her up to play with? You guys sure know how to have fun. Mind if we join in for a bit?" As he spoke, he called over another security guard to drag Xiaoya away. While walking, he kept mocking me, thanking me for bringing them such a pretty girl. I struggled desperately and shouted, trying to wake Xiaoya up, but she was still sound asleep, completely unresponsive. However, in less than 2 minutes, screams from the security guards erupted from the next room. Soon the room fell silent. Xiaoya emerged, covered in blood. The bandage on her mouth had been ripped off by the security guard, and she looked unusually excited. I knew she must have tasted human flesh. After eating human meat, Xiaoya would definitely turn into a real zombie. Xiaoya licked the blood from the corner of her mouth and slowly approached me. In despair, I closed my eyes. Being eaten by my girlfriend was still better than being eaten by those two disgusting security guards. But in the next second, I suddenly heard her call my name. Xiaoya, who had tasted human flesh under my father's influence, still retained a trace of humanity and saved me along with 2 other classmates. The classmate who lost his hand was named Zhang Chen, and his major was medical research. He told me that when the zombie outbreak happened, they were in class. A large horde of zombies suddenly burst into the classroom and started biting anyone they saw. The teacher led the students into the laboratory, and they barely managed to block the door with storage cabinets. But soon, the problem of food arose. Because the zombie outbreak happened without warning, the students hardly had any food on them. After 2 days of hunger, they had no choice but to open the door and send out 2 students each day. The groups were sent out to look for food and rescue, but unfortunately, 3 teams in a row were dispatched and not a single one returned. Later, it was Zhang Chen and old Zhou's turn, and they ended up encountering these 2 security guards in the cafeteria. Zhang Chen hoped I could return to the laboratory to deliver food supplies to the professor and classmates, and also inform them about the situation outside. There were many antibiotics and medicines in the lab, which might help alleviate Xiaoya's symptoms of zombification. I agreed immediately, but Zhang Chen couldn't lead me there himself because he was now extremely weak and needed plenty of rest. Before setting out, I searched the entire security office and found a lot of snacks and drinks. I packed some of them into my backpack and then set off. The heavy snow outside was still falling relentlessly, and it had already reached above my knees, making it even harder to move. All around, everything was blanketed in white, and not a single zombie was in sight. We arrived at the medical school, and from a distance, it looked completely lifeless, with no sign of any survivors. I quietly peeked in from the entrance. There were a few scattered zombies in the middle of the lobby, so I couldn't just barge in. I had to use my wits. I remembered from movies that zombies have very poor eyesight and mainly rely on their sense of smell and hearing to hunt. So I came up with an idea. I climbed into the restroom on the first floor. Because the water supply was cut off, there was still a lot of unflushed feces in there. I forced myself to endure the stench and smeared it on my body so I could mask my own scent. As for Xiaoya, I didn't want her to take the risk with me, so I signaled for her to stay in the restroom and wait for me to come back. I mustered up my courage and walked in step by step. Fortunately, just like in the movies, the zombies didn't seem to notice me. When I got to the second floor, I saw a group of zombies gathered at the entrance of the laboratory. My classmates were definitely trapped inside. I picked up a piece of glass and threw it to the end of the hallway. The zombies were immediately drawn to the sound and moved toward it while I hid in the corner, barely daring to breathe. Taking advantage of the moment when they left, I quickly slipped into the laboratory. But once I got inside, I realized that Xiaoya had been following right behind me the whole time. I was about to scold her. What if she got bitten by a zombie? Then it suddenly hit me. Xiaoya hadn't put on the zombie repellent either, and yet the zombies didn't bite her. It seemed they mistook her for one of their own. For a moment, I felt a bit sad, not sure if this was a good thing or a bad thing. The laboratory was filled with classmates lying all over the place, too weak even to lift their heads and look at me. Only the advisor managed to weakly ask who I was. As I handed out food to them, I told them about Zhang Chen's ordeal. After eating the instant noodles, everyone's strength visibly improved, and I was able to get a few bottles of antibiotics as I had hoped. But then another problem presented itself. How was I supposed to get dozens of classmates out of here? The advisor came up with an idea. Since feces can mask human scent, why not use the same method ourselves? During the week, we'd been trapped. Everyone had eaten, drunk, and relieved themselves in this very lab. Disgusting as it was also the simplest and most feasible solution. So we got to work. To improve the stickiness, the advisor poured a bottle of water into the mix, and after thoroughly stirring it, everyone smeared it on their faces. A few of the girls who cared about their appearance were reluctant at first, but when faced with death, a little filth and stench didn't matter anymore. Once everything was ready, we opened the door. The students lined up and slowly made their way down, while I stayed at the back to cover everyone. But just as we were about to leave the building, something unexpected happened. A zombie suddenly lunged at me, and I was about to be bitten. At the critical moment, Xiaoya threw her arm in front of me, and her arm was immediately bitten, leaving it a bloody mess. My heart ached for her. I grabbed the baseball bat and smashed it hard against the zombie's head. Human skulls are incredibly tough. In Japanese, I struck it 20 times before its head finally turned to mush. It was my first time killing someone, and I stood there in a daze. The loud, violent noise attracted even more zombies. The instructor yanked me away, and we escaped from the medical school. The instructor believed that, in the apocalypse, everyone needed to unite and build a camp together to resist the zombies. The rest of us students all agreed. Surviving alone in the apocalypse was just too difficult. However, a few students argued that Xiaoya was already infected and could bite someone at any moment. They said she should either be kicked out or killed. As they spoke, one of them even pulled out a knife. I couldn't believe it. Xiaoya and I had just saved them, and now they wanted to turn on us like this. What a bunch of ingrates. Angrily, I left with Xiaoya. As night fell, the temperature kept dropping. We had to find shelter indoors, or we'd freeze solid. I found a classroom without any zombies and climbed in. The place was a mess, and in the corner lay 2 bodies, hand in hand, but they hadn't turned. I ignored them, took a short rest, and then Xiaoya and I moved on together. I don't know how much time passed after that. I was startled awake by a nightmare, only to find myself lying on a soft bed. Looking around, I saw the room was warmly decorated. An elderly couple stood by my bedside. When they saw I was awake, they kindly reassured me not to worry. They were the school's physics teachers. They had found me shivering with cold in the classroom and brought me back here. I immediately asked about Xiaoya. The old man smiled gently and led me to the next room, but what I saw there terrified me. A zombie was standing on a treadmill, endlessly walking forward. Curious about the chunks of meat hanging in front of it, I asked, and the old man explained that this was his homemade generator. Every day, as long as he fed the zombie a piece of human flesh, it would keep walking on the treadmill around the clock, ensuring there was always electricity available in the room. In one corner of the room lay the bodies of the couple from last night. The hand that had been holding his girlfriend's had been chopped off, presumably to feed the zombie. A chill ran down my spine. When the food runs out, are they going to chop me up too? The old man opened another door, and I saw Xiaoya lying quietly on the bed. I felt much more at ease. But then I noticed a family photo on the nightstand, and in the picture, there was a young woman. The old lady's expression darkened as she said that was their only daughter. As she spoke, she led me to another door, and as soon as she opened it, inside, to my shock, there was a female zombie with an incredible figure. She had also been a teacher at the school and was bitten while trying to help the students escape. As she spoke, the old lady broke down in tears. Her daughter had always been single, and now she was gone without even leaving a child behind. Yes, what elderly person doesn't want to have grandchildren? Suddenly, the old man changed the subject and asked if Xiaoya was also a zombie and why she didn't bite people. I admitted that I didn't know either. After showing me around the rooms, the old lady prepared a lavish lunch for me, hoping I would stay and treat this place as my home. To be honest, I was tempted. Having a home in the apocalypse is such a blessing. After lunch, I lay down on the bed and soon drifted off to sleep again. But when I woke up this time, a female zombie appeared in front of me. Her mouth was covered, and she was posing in a strange way, but it was obvious that her figure was even better than Xiaoya's. I was stunned for a moment. What was I thinking about her? At that moment, my body started to burn with fever, and the zombie in front of me seemed to become more and more attractive and cute. I realized something was wrong, and immediately tried to open the door, but it had already been locked from the outside. I could only hear the old lady speaking from outside.
All right, just enjoy it. I've always wanted a grandchild. Just take pity on us.
At the same time, both my head and my other head started burning up. My body became stiff, and the zombie in front of me turned back into her appearance when she was alive. She was actually even more beautiful than Xiaoya. I couldn't help but pucker my lips and step by step walked toward her. Just as my life was about to be devoured, I suddenly remembered a set of ancestral skills my roommate had left me. After 30 seconds, the old couple saw that the room had gone quiet, so they opened the door. I had already been lying in wait behind the door. Wu Gunzi knocked the old man down, and when the old lady saw this, she immediately fell to her knees with a thud, crying and begging me not to hurt the old man. She said that if he died, she wouldn't be able to go on living either. For a moment, my heart softened. After all, they had never really tried to harm me. They just wanted a grandchild. I originally planned to leave with Xiaoya, but to my surprise, she was still in a deep sleep and couldn't be woken up no matter what I did. Could Xiaoya have starved to death? Anxious, I slapped her hard twice, but she still didn't react at all. The old lady told me that Xiaoya had probably entered a dormant state from not eating human flesh for a long time. She said her own daughter was the same way when she first turned into a zombie. What difference is there after eating human flesh? So I came up with an idea. I found a big pork knuckle in the fridge. Then I put it next to Xiaoya's nose. Xiaoya quickly woke up, but her face was full of disgust. That wouldn't do. Xiaoya had to learn to eat meat. This was the first step to becoming human again, so I had no choice but to set an example myself. I grabbed the big pork knuckle and right in front of Xiaoya, took a big bite. As I ate, I kept saying how delicious it was. Xiaoya, still a bit skeptical, took a bite too, but spat it out the next second. I came up with another idea. I grabbed a huge machete, cut my own finger, and let my blood drip onto the pork knuckle. Smelling the scent of blood, Xiaoya grabbed the pork knuckle and started gnawing on it. I let out a big sigh of relief. Finally, the problem of getting Xiaoya to eat meat was solved. In the days to come, I planned to stay at the old lady's house for a while, since it had water, electricity, and even heating. After what happened last time, the old couple had become much more well-behaved and even helped me charge my phone. This was the first time I turned it on since the zombie outbreak, and to my surprise, the phone still had a 6G network connection. China's infrastructure really is impressive. When I logged on to Qiandu, the site was flooded with news about the zombie outbreak, but the most eye-catching headline was about how, 10 years ago, an island nation discharged a large amount of nuclear wastewater into the Pacific Ocean, causing many marine creatures to gradually mutate. After people ate this seafood, they got sick, their bodies became sluggish, and they showed strong violent tendencies. The island nation suffered the consequences of its actions. 99% of its population has been infected. In the comments, netizens worldwide are expressing their concern for the island nation.
Karma. They deserve it for harming others.
Seeing everyone's well wishes finally calmed my anger quite a bit. When I returned to my main business, the latest news shocked me. The beautiful country plans to drop 20 little boys and fat men on the island nation to wipe out the zombie virus and prevent it from spreading. And just like that, in the year 2033, the island nation was completely wiped out.